Hello and welcome back. We are now hitting crunch time as some of you start your playoffs this week, so this video will be a must-watch for you. I'll break down each team with a good schedule and give you detailed goalie ads, but first I wanted to mention Timo Meier is back. 5-game goal streak, 7 goals in those 5 games, including a hat trick. He's had a 9-shot game, a 7-shot game. He's hitting every single game, some shot blocks as well. He's basically back to San Jose Timo Meier, and that is great news if you own him. Now, the Devils do have a 4-game week coming up with 2 light nights, but they're not the best schedule in week 22, so let's head over and see who is. So 53 games this week, light nights, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and possibly Sunday, depending on how you classify it. Over here, this didn't classify Sunday as a light night because there are 7 games, but there's enough to choose from if you're in a matchup where you need to come back on Sunday and, try to throw a Hail Mary for your week or your playoff matchup. That could be a huge day to pick up teams. There's also 10 teams that play that Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, which is noteworthy as well. And then you've got an interesting unicorn schedule here with the New York Rangers playing 5 times. They've got a front-loaded back-to-back. They've got a Thursday away game at Tampa and then a weekend back-to-back. So we'll go into detail about the potential forward pickups that you can have, the defense, and then obviously Jonathan Quick will become a goalie of interest this week. And then you also have a bunch of other schedules that are really advantageous with 4-game weeks. You've got the perfect Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday schedule with Winnipeg. That's usually what you would try to ask for in terms of getting guys into your lineup. They also have favorable matchups against Anaheim and Columbus, so that's also beneficial if you're looking to grab some of those guys, and we'll go into detail with them. And then we'll look at each of these 3 teams as well. But before we move on, I wanted to show you what the week 22 to 24 playoff schedule is like, just in case you are starting your playoffs this week. So for that entire stretch, these are the teams that you're going to want to focus on. You have Washington with 11 games total, 5 light nights. Then you also got Winnipeg with 3 light nights. You could technically count that Sunday as a 4th light night, so that would be 11 games total, 4 light nights. St. Louis with only 10 games compared to those 11, but they do have 3 light night games. And then LA, 10 games total and 5 light nights. So these are a lot of the teams that we'll be looking at in detail in this video, so that's why I wanted to mention it. And then hopefully you're playing against some of those guys. You can see this note down at the bottom here. Hope you're playing against McDavid, Draisaitl, Kucherov, Point, Pedersen, Miller, Hughes, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, Philip Forsberg. All of these guys are playing 2-game weeks this week, so this could be huge if you're going up against an opponent that has one of those guys. If you have any of these goaltenders, you're going to probably want to pay attention to the goaltending streaming section so that you can probably figure out what you're going to do going forward this week to try to get that volume that you need. But first, let's take a look at the week 22 specific schedule. And there's a 5-game week. We have to go into it. The New York Rangers with a 5-gamer. This is going to be difficult. 5-gamers are always difficult because, yes, you're getting the volume, but the players are obviously tired by the end of the week. So they're not necessarily going to put up much towards the end of the week, which is when you'd want them to on that Sunday matchup when you're probably trying to come back. But you're going to get a ton of volume from these guys. The number 1 ad is Lafreniere, 41% owned, dual eligible. He's on that top line with Panarin and Trocheck. They are still red hot, 8 points in his last 9 games. He even has a power play point. So that second power play unit is a little bit more productive than they were before. And I think that's one of the targets for the trade deadline, was trying to solidify that second power play unit. They also bring in Jack Roslovic. He's getting power play 2 times. He's only 6% owned. He's dual eligible center right wing. And he had 13 points in 12 games before the trade. His underlying numbers were really good. And right now, last night he was factored in on the top line with Kreider, second line, I guess, with Kreider and Zibanejad. They're definitely not the top line. That Lafreniere, Panarin, and Trocheck line is number 1 for New York, but he is playing with some excellent players, and he's getting power play 2 time as well, only 6% owns. I picked him up in one of my leagues today. But then you also have Braden Schneider at 1% owned. And this is a guy that every now and then will have a really nice week, but you have Jacob Trouba out for 2 to 3 weeks with a lower body injury, so Braden Schneider jumps up to play with Keandre Miller on that second pair. And in the last couple of weeks, last month, 2.17 hits per game, 1.75 blocks per game. So if that's what you're looking for in terms of peripherals, that's what you're going to get out of Schneider, and he's getting an elevated role. He had 5 shots last night with a hit and a block, and his ice time went up from 13 or 14 minutes a night all the way up to around 16 to 17 minutes. So that will help, especially in a 5-game week. With that injury, he will be seeing a ton of ice time. Now, as we look at the player hub, I want to bring in just a couple of things to your attention. If you're looking for hits, Matt Rempe is going to be the guy. He's way down here. He's not necessarily, prolific in much other, categories. He did kind of score a goal last night, even though it didn't count. But he's been averaging 3 hits per game on the season. So if you're looking for just hits, Rempe, very low ownership. He's averaging 3 hits per game, and he does chip in offensively a little bit. He does have a goal and an assist in his 9-game stretch with the Rangers. And then you can also look at Zach Jones if he's going to be in the lineup. Now, his stats don't look great, but he is relatively offensive, and it depends on how they're going to trust Braden Schneider in that second unit role. If they're going to give Jones a little bit more of a look on the second power play unit, that would definitely bump up his stock. But he's an offensive player. He was getting a couple of assists in previous weeks when he was actually in the lineup, so this could be a very deep league target for you. And then you still have Will Cooley. He's another guy who's going to get you a ton of hits, 3.24 hits per game. He gets a little bit of power play 2 time, and he scores some goals. You can see his trend going up over the last 2-3 months. So he's been improving week over week. So there are a number of options for you if you're looking on the waiver wire. You can also go to Wenberg. He's not my favorite fantasy player. He does get you some shot blocks. He will be out there on the penalty kill, but and he is technically on power play 2 right now. I just don't see a lot in his file that would suggest that he's a good fantasy performer, but he is going to be playing third line and power play 2, so if he's available, you could do that. I would prefer Jack Roslovic just given the line assignment. But that's going to do it for this part of the Rangers talk. We will get into Jonathan Quick towards the end in the goaltending section. But up next, let's take a look at the next best team, and one of the teams you're going to want to focus on throughout the entire playoff stretch between 22 and 24 week, and that is Winnipeg Jets. So a number of changes coming to the Jets. You have Tyler Toffoli coming over. He's 84% owned, so you're probably not going to get him. But you do still have Sean Monahan, 35% owned, 8 goals, 10 points in his last 11 games, 3 of those on the power play, some of that coming with Montreal, but he has been pretty decent since coming over to Winnipeg, and he is going to be in the top 6. Right now, the lines are Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, Nemesnikov, Monahan, Iafallo. But what does that mean about Toffoli? He hasn't gotten his visa, hasn't come over yet. So he will either factor in with Niederreiter and Lowry or with Nemesnikov and Monahan. Depending on how they want to use Iafallo, they can maybe move him to the other side, but he will be getting top 6 minutes and some power play time, so that is probably one of your better ads. You're also looking at Gabe Vilardi this week, center right wing, dual eligible, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points, 8 power play points in his last 7 games. However, he's missed a number of games recently with a day-to-day injury. He was supposed to miss Friday and Saturday, and he did. It's basically a wait-and-see approach. Is he going to be back this week? We don't know. If he is, he definitely is a must-add. At 35% in most 12-team leagues, he should be there. If he's not there, you do have Nino Niederreiter. He's got 4 goals, 5 points, and 8 hits in his last 5 games. He's only 19% owned. He's usually good for hits and goal scoring and a little bit of shot volume, around 2.5 shots per game. And then last but not least, you have Brendan Dillon, 22% owned, averaging 3.82 hits per game just this last month. So this is another volume play where if you're going to try to find the volume ads that you could potentially make the most out of, it's usually the peripheral guys that are going to get you a ton of hits or blocks or shots or something like that, that is going to pump you into the right direction and give you the stats that you need. As I bring in the player hub, you can see here he's averaging over 3 hits per game, as it just disappeared for absolutely no reason. But he's averaging 3 hits per game on the season, which is really nice to have. And then the goal scoring is not bad either. 7 goals on the year for Brendan Dillon is a little bit abnormal. That's why his ownership is at 22%. He gives you the hits, gets a couple of blocks, 1.32 blocks, but he gets a little bit of goal scoring in there as well. It's pretty sporadic, so you're not going to count on that. You're mainly averaging, or you're getting him in for those average hits. 3.82 over the last month is up from his season-long 3.02 average. So pretty impressive hitting from Brendan Dillon. But now let's take a look at the next team that you could potentially add from. Again, a couple of options from this team, and we're talking about the LA Kings. Now, we went over them a couple weeks ago. Not much has changed in terms of the ads. Trevor Moore, 60% owned, but in a shallow league, he's a must-own right now. 6 points in his last 7, 18 shots, 15 hits in that span. He's been really productive. You also have Philip Deneau, another guy that I usually go to on LA. 4 goals, 5 points in his last 6 games, 15 shots and 7 hits along with that. And if you're in a face-off league, he wins a lot of those as well. And then again, for the peripherals, for the defenseman with shots and blocks, hits, things like that, Matt Roy, 25% owned, 3 assists in his last 4 games, 8 hits and 16 blocks. So not much has changed in terms of LA ads. You're getting a lot of the same names, but these guys are productive, and I've been owning Trevor Moore for the last week or 2 in my main league. He's been popping off, playing really well over the last week or 2, so I can definitely recommend personally that Trevor Moore would be your best ad this week if he's available. If not, you do have Deneau, you do have Matt Roy. You can also go Quinton Byfield. There are a couple of other guys. As we take a look at their hub, here's Trevor Moore, and here's why you own him. 95th percentile shot volume, and he just disappeared again. I don't know why that's bugging out like that, but 3.14 shots per game, 0.38 goals per game. He's about a hit per game as well, getting some shot blocks and a little bit of power play time. But he's been improving basically since the end of December, kind of going up, had this one down week, but then continuing up in the right direction, now a 76 on the completeness rating. You also have Philip Deneau and Matt Roy in this area. Deneau very complete, just not popping off in any one particular category, just very solid across the board. And then you have Matt Roy, hits and blocks, 2.4 blocks per game, 2 hits per game. That's what you like to see, and some shot volume as well. They did send Brent Clark down. He would have been a guy that I would have looked in a deeper league format for the power play production, goals, and some shot volume. You can also go Quinton Byfield. He's in the mid-30s in terms of his ownership. He might have actually jumped up to the 40s with some of the play that he's been using. Over the last couple weeks, he's been playing pretty well. Dipped a little bit last week, but still relatively productive, still getting some power play time and some top 9 minutes. So these are some options for you. But up next, we'll take a look at another team that might have a couple of better options for you, and that would be the St. Louis Blues. Now, if you're looking for those peripherals, this is why I'm mentioning St. Louis. That's mainly what you're going to get out of the first 2 guys. Colton Parayko, 2.29 shots, 1.86 hits, 3.57 blocks per game over the last 2 weeks, and that is an improvement over what he's been doing over the course of the season. When we look at Parayko, you can see his trend going up in the right direction until basically the last 2 weeks where he hasn't scored any points. So he's still getting those shots, hits, and blocks, but the points have kind of dried up. He's averaging 2.66 blocks per game over the season, so he's almost 1 block per game more over the last 2 weeks. The shot volume is a little bit low. I'd like to see it above 2 shots per game, but it's not bad considering what he's mainly used for. And the goal scoring, 9 goals on the year, is pretty good for a defenseman. Same type of thing as Brendan Dillon. You're not necessarily expecting that every game or most games, most weeks, but you are going to get it every now and then. So you're mainly getting him for blocks and some hits coverage, a little bit of shot volume, and some goal scoring. Now, you can also go to Torrey Krug. He's been relatively productive over the past month. 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 points, 5 of those on the power play in his last 15 games. You can see the power play numbers are okay. 0.17 power play points per game, above 2 shots per game is nice, and 90th percentile in assists is also nice. He's 28% owned, and I suppose he's been their main power play quarterback. They didn't necessarily have a prolific power play last night, so I didn't get a good look at him, but it's between him and Justin Falk, and between the 2 of them, Falk is definitely more complete, going to be a little bit better for you, but probably a little bit higher ownership as well, so Torrey Krug is a nice option there. And then you also have Jake Neighbors. Now, Neighbors hasn't done much in the last couple of games, but he's got 20 goals in 64 games this year, 83rd percentile in goal scoring, right around the same power play numbers as Torrey Krug, despite the fact he's probably gotten less time. 10% owned, dual eligible left wing, right wing, so he's one of the younger guys that you can potentially get access to. Zach Bolduc was called up. He hasn't done much since his call up. I believe just 1 goal in 9 or 10 games. So Jake Neighbors is probably your safest bet in terms of this ownership range, but you would also try to go out and grab maybe somebody like Braden Shen if you're looking for hits, specifically 2.13 hits per game. That would be worth adding Braden Shen. He's just dropped off quite a bit here from the last couple of weeks. The offense has kind of dried up, so that's not what you're looking for as you head into your playoff week. But a bunch of different options for you out of St. Louis. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the team that you're probably going to want to pay attention to the most heading into your playoffs, and that is the Washington Capitals. So the Capitals, they also have a bunch of guys that you can find on the waiver wire. Tom Wilson would probably be your best bet in terms of a bangers league. 4 points in his last 4 games, 8 hits, 5 blocks. 2 goals, 2 assists, nice even split there. You know what you're going to get out of Tom Wilson. You're going to get an absolute buttload of hits, and you're going to get the occasional goals. That's what he's good for. He's the 3rd most complete player for Washington on the hub, coming in at a 75, 76 thereabouts, and the main reason is because of the hits and blocks. So 95th percentile in hits, 96th in blocks for a forward. 3 hits per game. He's been going above that at various points throughout the season. Came back from an injury, and that average dropped a little bit, but he's back. He's scoring goals again. This goal number usually is a little bit higher than it is. 15 goals on the year in 61 games. He's been as high as 25 in a season, so he has that potential to score more, and he's got 2 goals in his last 4 games. The shot volume is not that bad, 2.34 shots per game, and then you're obviously getting hits and blocks out of him, and that's what you can come to expect on a regular basis from him. You also have Dylan Strome, who is absolutely red hot. 4-game point streak, 8 points in those 4 games, 4 of those on the power play, a power play point in each of those 4 games. 1 goal, 7 assists, but he's also got 2 goals, 16 points, 8 of those on the power play in the last 10 games. So for Dylan Strome, you're getting almost no hits. That's why his completeness rating is relatively low. If he hit at all, he would be probably above Tom Wilson, maybe in this John Carlson range in the upper 70s. He's been climbing basically back here since the beginning of December. He was a 54, now up to a 73, so just taking really nice steps all throughout the last 3 months or so. 88th percentile in goals, 90th in power play points, so really starting to come along. And Ovechkin is, alive and well now, scoring goals more often than he used to in the beginning part of the season. So if you're going to get Dylan Strome setting up Ovechkin on that power play, that's definitely something to take a look at 36% ownership. Now, if you're in a deep league, the guy that's been the hottest that you can definitely get access to is Sonny Milano. His file is not necessarily something that you're going to look at and say, hey, I want that guy, but 85th percentile in goals, 10 goals in only 31 games this year. He's on a 4-game goal streak, 4 goals, 1 assist, a power play point in there, 6 goals in his last 8 games. So for whatever reason, whether it's the line assignment, whether it's the guys he's playing with, he's been playing really well. I believe he has a hat trick in that stretch as well. And you can see here he's jumped massively this week, and that was a couple weeks ago. That was from the 17th to the 25th of February, and he's continued that pace, continuing to climb up to a 47. He's 0% owned, so if you're in a 20-team league for whatever reason, your playoffs probably did start because you have so many players or so many teams in your league that have to be accommodated for. So if you're in a league size like that, Sonny Milano might be one of your better options. But that's going to do it for our look at the various teams this week. Up next, we're going to take a look at the goaltending in great detail just to give you some really good streaming options. First up for our look at the goaltenders this week, Jonathan Quick has to be the top of the board here. 24% owned. He is the Rangers' backup goaltender, but he has fallen off a little bit just in the last couple of starts that he's had, and Shesterkin has obviously taken up the slack, and he's been incredible over his last 10 or 11 games. Jonathan Quick, still a really solid season, 13 wins in 20 starts, .916 save percentage, 2.45 goals against, and he's going to see 2 starts this week. So he's got a Monday, Tuesday back-to-back versus New Jersey and then down at Carolina. Then Saturday, they've got back-to-back. You're looking at Saturday at Pittsburgh, Sunday home against the New York Islanders. So I would imagine they'll use Shesterkin for the Islander game. I would imagine they'll use Shesterkin for the Carolina game, which means you're seeing Quick versus the Devils, which is going to be an interesting game. Might be high scoring, but they should hopefully pull that win out for you. And then Saturday against Pittsburgh, that should be a win just given how bad Pittsburgh's been lately. So this would be an opportunity to pick him up, 24% owned. He's one of those guys that, in the early part of the season was putting up great numbers. Now the numbers have fallen off a little bit, but you're still getting excellent team exposure. As you can see on the hub, they are around 50th percentile in terms of team defense at 5-on-5. Their penalty kill is top 5 in the league, however, and he is well above expected, 12.8 goals saved above expected. So that is nice to see for Jonathan Quick, and he's pretty much been top 5 in the league in goals against and save percentage for almost all this entire season. So this would be an opportunity to pick him up. You also have a back-to-back for Anaheim, Lucas Dostal. Anaheim is not a team that I would normally recommend picking up their goaltending. However, Dostal's been excellent in his last 3 games. 2 wins, 2.29 goals against, .938 save percentage in his last 3 starts. They've got a back-to-back Thursday at Minnesota, Friday at Winnipeg. Hopefully he would get the Minnesota game, although that's not necessarily a worse offense than Winnipeg. Both are very prolific, so it could be a bad spot start, which is maybe why he's not the best pickup option this week. But I did want to mention it just because he's red hot right now, and they do have that back-to-back. Now, another guy who is red hot is Justus Annunen, who I believe both of those shutouts came against Chicago. So that's one thing to keep in mind. He did play the easiest team to play against in the NHL. He shut him out both times, which is nice to see, which is why he's trended up in the right direction now of 52. His save percentage and goals against look really great, but this is a small sample size. So 95th percentile, 929 save percentage, 2.4 goals against. But it, again, is a small sample size. So he's one of those guys that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. They do have this back-to-back here, Tuesday at Calgary, Wednesday at Vancouver. So let's see what the guy does. He's got 2 back-to-back shutouts. Maybe not going to get that level of play out of him this time around, but he is playing for one of the better teams in the NHL who's going to give him a bunch of run support. So at 7% ownership, these two would be deeper league options. If you can't get some of these other guys, maybe you look at these two guys, Annunen and Dostal. Of the 3 that you're looking at right here, I would prefer to have James Reimer. So Reimer, I mentioned in a previous weekly video, 2 wins in his last 4 starts, 935 save percentage, 2.4 goals against. They've got a back-to-back Saturday versus Buffalo, Sunday at Pittsburgh. Both of those are gettable games. If he's in for either of those, I would definitely want that exposure. Detroit is in that push for the playoffs where they're going to need to win games. They have Alex Lyon. He's way higher ownership. He's in the mid-50s. But you have James Reimer there at 8%, so if he's available, that would be one place to pick up a Detroit goaltender and hopefully get an easy win out of that. Buffalo hasn't been great this year. Pittsburgh hasn't been great lately, so these are 2 teams where you could get that out of him. You also have David Rittich here. Now, you can see here Cam Talbot back up at the top of the leaderboard in terms of goaltending, so they are back on the Cam Talbot train. He's been trending up over the past 2 weeks or so. Getting a lot more starts, playing really well, and he's improved 11 spots week over week. So a huge improvement from Cam Talbot, which does not bode well for Rittich. So if we scroll down and take a look at Rittich's numbers, they're not necessarily what they used to be, but they were very good at the earlier part of the season where he was getting a ton of starts. So that's why he's 93rd percentile in goals against, 2.3 goals against. That's a product of that team defense. But he's also a 914 save percentage and 10.3 goals saved above expected. So he is still relatively productive as a backup. Now, the numbers aren't going to, bear that out over his last 3 starts, 1 win, 894 save percentage, but LA in a push for the Pacific Division, trying to get into the playoffs, trying to secure their spot, trying to not have to play Vegas in the first round. And this game is why I'm mentioning him. Friday at Chicago, Saturday at Dallas. I would assume they're going to use Cam Talbot. So David Rittich against Chicago, that should be the easiest win on this entire board. Rittich at 16% ownership might be your best short-term stream this week if you're just looking for that Friday start against Chicago. Now, up next, we do have to talk about the Devils goaltending, and it pains me to do so. There was a cool meme, and maybe I can post it here. Yeah, the meme was basically, this is Devils goaltending before the trade deadline, this is Devils goaltending after the trade deadline, and it's pretty accurate. They're not much improved, but they are slightly improved, so let's take a look at it. Here you can see Jake Allen right around the same level as Akira Schmid and Nico Dawes, not any better. And that's including his new team defense exposure in New Jersey, 36th percentile. He is below expected. He is well below average in save percentage and goals against. So maybe not the best option, but it's worth a shot if you're looking at that game on Saturday. So Saturday at Arizona, that's what you're going to hopefully target out of one of these guys. You also have Kakkonen, who is a little bit higher up here. He's got a little bit more total saves just because he was getting shelled in San Jose. That's why he's a little bit higher. But he also is below expected, also below average in save percentage and goals against. So neither are particularly great options just looking at the numbers. However, you're going to want this game at Arizona. They've been terrible over the last month. And whichever goaltender's in, that's who I would favor. I would not pick up that goalie for Sunday at Vegas. That looks like it's not going to be a nice setup for you. Now, you also have Semyon Varlamov. He's not been good lately either. However, they do have that Saturday game against Ottawa. Ottawa literally just lost to San Jose which is really embarrassing. They're, you know, that I would not be happy if I were an Ottawa Senators fan with the way things went at the deadline, not selling enough off, and then, you know, on top of that, pretty much laying an egg against the worst team in the league. Hopefully they can spin it to their fans that they're tanking for Celebrini, but you can see here, you know, Varlamov dropping from 66 or 56 all the way down to a 46 over the last couple months. Just hasn't played well, but you're looking at that one game, and he is 31% owned, so that is a little bit high, but that one game might be worth the spot start on Saturday. You might get some of your other goaltenders in on that Saturday, so maybe it's not the best spot start, but that is an option for you if you're looking at the Islanders, who desperately need to win these games. That Sunday game at the Rangers is going to be a huge game for them and their playoff hopes if they want to stay alive. But that Saturday game is as much of a must-win as the Rangers game as well. So hopefully Varlamov will pull out a win for you if you're in a points league and you need something like that. Now we're going to take a little bit more of a look at the goaltenders. We'll look at a couple guys, and you don't want to miss this because these are some of the best options that we have. Now, Joel Hofer isn't specifically the best option this week, but he's not a bad option. So they have that back-to-back versus Minnesota and then Sunday versus Anaheim. If he gets that Anaheim game on Sunday, this would be one of those Sunday starts that could potentially win you your week. If you're in a close matchup, you need that goaltending start. St. Louis versus Anaheim sets up like a St. Louis win. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but at 6% ownership and the fact that he's relatively above expected, 4.9 goals saved above expected. The defense in front of him is not great, but a 910 save percentage, 2.9 goals against, and he was trending up basically from mid-December all the way through mid-February. He's kind of taken a little bit of a slip in the last couple of games. So has the entire team. They've kind of all gone ice cold over the last, I say, 2 weeks. So maybe not the best time to grab Joel Hofer. However, that one spot start is the reason why you would add him. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more in terms of the goaltender that you're trying to add this week, I mentioned last week that Grubauer was potentially stealing the starting role in Seattle, and we have a lot of the same type of things going on in terms of Washington goaltending. So if you look at the far right, those are the stats of each of those goalies over the last month. So you can see Charlie Lindgren, 6 wins in 10 starts, 911 save percentage. And then you have Darcy Kemper. He's only got 2 wins. He's an 889 save percentage, so much worse. Kemper's still more owned up than Lindgren, but Lindgren seems to have taken the net back. So in a, you know, not just the week, but an entire stretch of games from 22 to 24 where you will have a bunch of Washington games in there, Lindgren will probably have to play a bunch of those. And I don't know if they're still making a playoff push, but this could be an opportunity to grab the better of the two goaltenders at the lower rostered percentage. So Charlie Lindgren, 9.4 goals saved above expected is really nice to see. He's still a 912 and a 2.7 goals against despite having a little bit of a wavering. So he had an excellent couple of months, went through a little bit of a tough stretch where Kemper kind of took the net back over, but over the last month he's kind of taken it back from Kemper. So this would be an opportunity to grab Lindgren at 36% ownership. They do have that back-to-back. If he's getting that game at Seattle, that would be preferable. You don't want to put him out against Edmonton. You know, obviously they've bolstered up at the trade deadline. You also have McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, all the usual suspects that could light up a goaltender. So if he's getting this Thursday game, that would be preferable. But either way, he might get a couple more games in a 4-game week with him being the better of the two goaltenders. And then last but not least, we have to also talk about Brossoit. So you can notice both of these guys are up towards the top of the goalie hub. So they're not upper echelon because they're not getting a ton of starts. That's why Brossoit is so low. However, when you look at Brossoit, the numbers are crazy. So 2.1 goals against average, 924 save percentage, 8.8 above expected, and the team in front of him is really good defensively. He's got 4 wins over his last 4 starts, a 938 save percentage, and a 1.75 goals against. He's one guy that I always recommend. If he's starting the game, go out and stream him. He's your best streaming option in any given environment just because of the defense in front of him, the way he's been playing this year, and he's getting some run support now. Their offense is even more bolstered with Tyler Toffoli coming in. So this is a nice opportunity to grab Brossoit. They do have you know, a couple of opportunities this week. I don't believe they have any back-to-backs because all of their games are on the light nights, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So it's not necessarily a back-to-back play, but if he starts any of those 4 games, I would definitely look at Brossoit as one of the best goalie stream options this week. But that's going to do it for this week's video. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully I can help you win your playoff week if you're starting the playoffs right now. If you're not starting the playoffs right now, if you're 23 to 25 or week 24 to 26, check out the quick breakdown video I just did yesterday. You can get out ahead of those weekly videos as we look forward to those playoff matchups. So go check those out. In the meantime, leave a comment down below if this helped you out, and hopefully I can help you guys win your playoff weeks. But that's it for this one. Thanks as always, and I'll see you in the next one.